I mean steep. Steep country. We were looking across that valley at a distance of perhaps 1,000 yards from one mountainside to the other, but almost straight down to the creek, 2,000 feet below, then straight up the cliffs on the other side. This was going to be a tough hunt. Hi folks, Spencer Remple here, the Moose Whisperer, bringing you exciting hunting and outdoor adventure stories from around the world. Today's story is about hunting the elusive and shy white ghost of the mountains, the beautiful and respected mountain goat. As usual, stay tuned after the story to hear more about the characters and area of this great hunting adventure. But for now, let's get straight into the story. The year was 1980 in the Purcell Mountains of southern British Columbia. A gorgeous and remote mountain range with very little human population, despite its southern location in milder weather. An outdoorsman's paradise, where you can hunt or view grizzly bear, mountain goat, elk, mule deer, black bear, coyotes, wolves, lynx, bobcat, cougar, and even caribou. Yes, believe it or not, mountain caribou live at high elevation, which is similar to the tundra of the north. Very interesting, but that's a story for another time. Well, in 1980, I was 11 years old hunting with my dad, Harvey, who would have been 38. This is Harvey's hunting story, but told from my perspective. At 11 years old, my brain was a sponge, and I had the hugest desire to learn everything my dad knew. I was getting bigger, stronger, more capable, and hadn't hit those teenage years yet. You know, the strange years when you think you know everything? My uncle used to call them the bonehead years. A statement I thought ridiculous until my own sons turned that age. How accurate he was. You know how it is when you're around 16 or 17 and you think that your generation has personally discovered sex, alcohol, and being cool? And your parents know nothing of these things. But I wasn't there yet. I was 11 years old and I looked up to my dad as everything I wanted to be. Someday I'd be big and strong and drive a truck around in the bush anywhere I wanted. But for now, I was by my dad's side. So we left our house early in the morning, thermoses filled with coffee and hot chocolate, as well as lunch kits with sandwiches and cookies, prepared the night before by my loving mom. It would be over a 1-hour drive from our home to the mountains to where we could glass, or look, for mountain goats. Looking for goats and grizzly bear was my dad's favorite pastime. It brought him into the gorgeous high alpine country, where his love for flora and fauna expanded. As we walked the roads and trails in those mountains, he would tell me of track and sign. He would talk about weather, time, daylight hours, and precautions we should take. He taught me the ability to have a keen eye and the patience to wait. We would talk about edible or useful plants and how to build an emergency shelter or even a cabin. Those were great times. I especially loved hunting goats, as usually they were so far away I could talk as much and as loudly as I wanted. Exuberantly learning from my mentor and hero.
You're big and strong, and I'm puny!
So slowly we drove up the old logging road that was in surprisingly good shape, although very narrow and steep. Harvey was an experienced mountain driver and could easily navigate that road while listening to my stories, answering my many questions, drinking a tea and saying, "Oh, really? Wow," as I talked on and on. Time spent in that truck with Dad as my captive audience are some of my fondest memories. Eventually, we reached a place where the valley narrowed and the mountain on the other side of the valley was less than 1,000 meters away. That side of the mountain was steep, about 80% sheer rock with about 20% clumps of vegetation clinging here and there. Perfect goat country. No cougar, wolf, or bear would risk its life to try and catch its next meal up there. We stopped and decided to look around. "Well, look at that," my dad said, leaning over the hood of the truck, binoculars pressed to his eyes. "What is it?" I said, throwing a stick down and leaving my imaginary sword fight. "Well, I'll be darned if that ain't a big billy goat straight across the valley from us," said Dad, pondering his next move. He gave me a chance to look through the binoculars, and sure enough, this large goat with big curved horns and a bushy goatee beard was staring straight back at me, quite unconcerned. He was all by himself, which is another clue as to whether the goat is male or female. You see, Mountain goats, both Billy and Nanny, have horns. Yes, horns, not antlers, meaning they never shed them but keep them year-round. Horn is made out of the protein keratin, the same material that makes up fingernails, claws, hooves, and hair. The horn is an outer layer with a core of bone inside. Anyways, in any case, identifying a male from a female can be difficult, and there are many clues that you have to find before the correct identification can be made. We had all the time in the world to stare at this lonesome billy goat, and we were certain it was a billy, not a nanny. My dad pondered. How in the world will I get close enough to get a shot at that goat that's staring straight at us? You see, goats have an amazing eyesight, and there is absolutely no way you can sneak up on one if he already sees you or if there's a line of sight towards where you are. A goat has eyes like a hawk, and he was probably seeing us as clearly as we were using our binoculars. In any case, there was no sneaking up on this big old boy. Normally, we would hike down the valley bottom, cross the raging glacier creek, climb up and around where we couldn't be seen, move up and above, and then try to sneak down on the goat. This plan of assault wasn't going to work this time. There was just too much open country, too far to walk around. How far do you think it is from here to that goat, straight across the valley? My dad asked. You see, back in those days, 1981, we didn't have rangefinders. Normally, what you would do when trying to find range is look at a distance that you could judge accurately. You know, like for example, 100 yards to that tree, and then I can tell that that buck is about 3 times farther than that, so it must be around 300 yards. That's the way we did it back then in those days. There was also no fancy scopes that adjusted for bullet drop, nor were we aware of any ballistics. We only knew from trial and error how much bullet drop there was at different ranges, depending on the caliber of gun you were shooting. Anyway, this is all to say that long-distance shooting was not a thing back then. I don't know, looks like a heck of a long way to me, I said, wondering if he was thinking about shooting that far. With absolutely nothing in between us to help gauge the distance, it was really hard to estimate. Well, that looks like 600 yards if it was an inch, my dad said. Could be further, he mentioned, bringing those binoculars back to his eyes. About 10 minutes passed and my dad looked up and said, I think I got a plan. I'm going to take a rest on the box of this truck and aim about 3 feet high. I want you to take these binoculars and watch that goat. Concentrate on keeping your eyes open. Put these earplugs in your ears so you won't flinch when the shot rings out. With your eyes wide open, you should be able to see where the bullet hits the snow above or below the goat. Then tell me and I'll adjust my follow-up shot. Okay, Dad, I couldn't believe my good luck in being an active part of this hunt. My dad put his jacket down on the hood of the truck, laying his rifle on that for about as steady and perfect rest as he could get. He knew his rifle well, a 7mm Magnum, sighted in for 200 yards, and he had made shots about as far out as 400 yards before, knowing that the bullet drop for that was almost 2 feet. But how far was this goat? Was it 600 yards? Was it 700 yards? The bullet drop between those two distances would be a great difference. Well, I'm going to shoot 3 feet high, Dad said, which was just an estimation because it's hard to tell exactly what 3 feet is like way out there when you're looking through your scope. Oh well, maybe this idea of me watching was going to help. I put the binoculars to my eyes with the earplugs in. I heard Dad say, "Get ready," and I strained with all I could to hold my eyes open. Boom! The shot rang out, and I didn't flinch, and I saw a small explosion in the snow above his back. The goat seemed concerned about what just smacked the snow above him, but so confident in his position and safety that he didn't even move an inch. I yelled, "Maybe a foot high," I said. Boom! The second shot rang out, and again I saw the impact of the bullet in the snow, this time just inches above his back. "Just a little lower," I hollered at my dad. "That was maybe 2 inches high." I said, quickly getting a few blinks in before I tried with all my might to keep my eyes open. I heard my dad let out a soft breath, and boom! The 7mm barked again. Perfect shot, I cried out, as I honestly saw the bullet hit the goat and spray red in the snow behind him. You got him, Dad, you got him, I celebrated, hardly believing my own eyes. Was there nothing my dad could not do? But this was just the beginning. The fun part was over, and now the scary part was about to begin. The goat walked maybe 3 steps ahead, collapsed, and started sliding down the cliff. Just below him was a very small outcropping with a little bit of grass and a small pathetic tree with its roots wrapped around the rock. Well, I'll be darned if that goat didn't fall right into that tree and die right there. Well, Dad was smiling from ear to ear, and I was jumping around excitedly proclaiming his accuracy and precision. Good shot, Dad, good shot! Well, now I've got to go get that goat, Harvey said, and there was only one way to do that. That was to descend this incredibly steep, brushed-in slide chute 2,000 feet to the valley bottom below. These mountains are so steep and narrow that the valley bottom was all of 100 feet wide and completely taken up by a raging glacial creek. I'll leave you here with the binoculars, my dad said. Don't leave the truck and keep an eye on me, he commented as he approached the precipice. Down he went, and I quickly lost sight of him as he disappeared into the horrid slide alder brush that makes travel almost impossible. It wasn't long until I saw him at the bottom. I peered through the binoculars and could see he was getting ready to cross the creek. With pants, boots, socks, and rifle above his head, he plowed into the frigid and fast-moving water. I don't know if I can even explain to you how cold fast-moving glacial water is. I'm certain it's only half a degree above freezing, and that coldness causes actual pain in your legs as you wade through. A brief stop on the other side to get dressed, and my dad was then scaling the rock cliff on the other side. This is when I started to get nervous. Looking through those binoculars, I could tell that he was pressed up against the rock, climbing with all hands and feet and the rifle on his back, scaling that cliff like some kind of crazy free climber. I watched as the terrain got continually steeper and worse. He slowly moved up, up, up he rose, as did my anxiety for his danger. He's going to slip. He's going to fall and die, I thought. I couldn't help my fears. Started feeling teary-eyed and shaky as I watched through the binoculars. I felt so helpless, as nothing but an observer. Why did he do this? It's not worth his life. What can I do? I was starting to panic. Well, my dad had talked to me a lot about God and prayer, and it was all coming back to me now. There was no way God would want my dad to die, I thought. I'll reach out for his help. All I could do now was pray, and pray I did. I put those binoculars down and got on my hands and knees in the dirt. With my hands together looking skyward, I pleaded to God to please save my dad and bring him back to me safely. I continued praying for quite some time, believing that if I could somehow show God how earnest I was, perhaps he would help. Losing track of where Dad was, I jumped up and grabbed the binoculars. He wasn't there. No, wait, where is he? Oh, there, a little higher yet. There he was. He was at the mountain goat already. He made it! Was there nothing that man couldn't do? Wait a minute. If it was that hard climbing up there, how's he going to pack that goat down? Well, Dad must have been pondering that question at that time as well. For as I was watching him through the binoculars, I saw him simply boot that goat over the edge and down, thump, thump, bang, flying through the air, finally hit a few trees at the bottom. Ha ha, good one, Dad, I thought to myself, and even let out a few loud whoops and hollers of joy and excitement. Dad heard me from all the way across the valley, and through the binoculars I could see him waving. Thank you, God, I shouted, for not forgetting my answered prayers. Well, it was a few more hours till Dad got back, and I entertained myself by eating and drinking everything I had left and resuming my imaginary sword fight against the legion of evil ninjas that existed in my mind. Dad made it down that mountainside, skinned out that goat that was thankfully undamaged from the fall, field dressed it, and packed it all the way up that horrid slide alder chute. Was there anything that man could not do? Well, folks, that's my story. That's Harvey Remple's story, my dad. May he rest in peace. He was an amazing mountain man, hunter, logger, trapper, business owner, husband, and father. Many were the hours he spent in the forest and mountains of southern British Columbia, and it was my pleasure to learn from him. Folks, if you've got a son, a daughter, or even just know a young person who wants to go hunting and learn about the outdoors, take them and teach them. You're forming lifelong memories and skills that will never be forgotten and always appreciated. Well, that's my story, folks, but I'd like to tell yours. Folks, send in your story to me, either written or voice memo, to info@themoosewhisperer.com. Let me tell your story to the world. Thanks for watching, and hey, more stories to come.